Rugby World Cup final, folks. This is it. All Blacks, Springboks at Paris. Rugby World Cup final between these two titans of Rugby World Cups. 3 World Cups apiece. Somebody's going to get their 4th title. Someone is going to go home devastated. Pretty pumped. We're going to go through for the last time, 48 games out of 48. Some lineups, some stats, predictions, recent history. You guys can let us know your thoughts. This game is on Saturday, over in France, which is Sunday morning here in NZ. So still a little bit of time for us to keep things cool between now and the game itself. If you want some content, man, NZR Plus, they got heaps of good stuff, including match previews of the World Cup final. They've had John Smith on and Victor Matfield talking to Andy Ellis. They've had Aaron Smith talking about the World Cup final. It's interesting to hear him say they're trying to keep it as normal as possible, even if it's like the biggest occasion of your life. It's kind of the things they have to do. But yeah, I'll put a link down in the description to NZR Plus. There's heaps of good content there. And it's free. Recent history between the sides. The Springboks edged the last 5, 3 games to 2, with that most recent win at Twickenham being an emphatic 35 points to 7 win. We need to keep in mind, though, that game, the All Blacks lost probably their best tight head within 15 minutes to a leg injury. They had a red card before halftime. There were a bunch of cards in that game. So it was maybe not the most normal game, but in terms of the mental edge, you'd think the Springboks, a lot of those guys have inflicted the biggest ever win over the All Blacks in recent times. But the game before that at Mount Smart, the All Blacks won. Game before that at Joburg, the All Blacks won. Game before that at Mbonambi, the Boks won. The game before that in the Gold Coast, the Boks won. So they tend to be pretty good scoring games in recent times. I feel like the score may edge towards a lower side this weekend. But I mean, the last 3 times the games have been played, the winning side has scored 35 points. Yeah, we'll see if anybody can get to 35 points in this World Cup final. For the Springboks, a lot of talking points, especially the fact that they have gambled on a 7-1 split. They did the same at Twickenham, and it got pretty good results in that game. But yeah, just the one back on the bench in Villy Leroux. Keeping in mind, they have got a lot of very versatile players who can cover many positions. Front row is Kitshoff, Mbonambi, and Malherbe. So that's the same as what played in the semi-final. They will absolutely be looking to get on top at scrum time. And if you remember, in that most recent game, like De Groot, the All Blacks loosehead, conceded like 5 penalties or something crazy. Even Lomax, before he went off, conceded a couple. Yeah, scrum time going to be very important for the Boks. Last week's game, it was the scrum that got them out of trouble, and they'll be looking for big results from the scrum in this game too. Etzebeth and Mostert continue on in the second row. Remember, Etzebeth didn't really get much more than half a game last week, so he should be fit and raring to go. Also keeping in mind the Springboks are on one less day in terms of their rest and recovery because they played a day later than the All Blacks. Mostert, though, has been an absolute tackling machine. Prior to the World Cup, he was getting a little bit of stick for maybe not being up to scratch, but for what he does it exceptionally well. He is the top Springbok tackle, like I mentioned, well ahead of the likes of Kolisi and Etzebeth and Pieter-Steph and Mbonambi and all the other top tacklers. So, absolute tackling machine. You feel like he's going to be a key man, even if it's not all that flashy. Kolisi, Pieter-Steph, and Duane Vermeulen, that's the back row. All these guys, maybe not Pieter-Steph, but most of these guys are probably going to get substituted. Kwaka Smith's going to come on. Visa's going to come on. So these guys know that they can just go full bore for around about 40, 50 minutes, and then they're going to be replaced. Kolisi talked about it, and he's probably, at the moment, my favorite player to listen to at press conferences. He just speaks about everybody with the utmost respect, and has just, like, the fact that they asked him about, like, guys getting dropped, and he talked about in his own terms, like, he doesn't like coming off after 45 minutes, but he knows that if he's looking tired and the coaches see that he needs to come off, you know, he'll come off. It's what's best for the team is the priority. And he said at the end of the World Cup, it's not the players' names that go on the trophy, it's the country. So, I mean, yeah, that's it, isn't it? So, real kind of team culture, and he's at the forefront of that. Backs, de Klerk and Pollard, probably 2 of the most important guys on the pitch with the 7-1 split. If there's 2 guys you don't want to get injured, it's probably de Klerk and Pollard. They do have guys who can step into those roles in a pinch, but they don't really have a specialist 9, and they don't really have a specialist 10. I know Willemse can play 10. I know Leroux can play 10. I know Kolbe's played 10 for Toulouse and whatnot. But you know what I mean. They don't have Marty Libok in this squad. And likewise, Kolbe's your backup 9, but he's a fill-in 9 at best. So Faf needs to play 80 minutes in all likelihood and just stay fit. Allende and Kriel, that's the midfield, so there's no still temptation to bring back Lucanio. He wasn't even brought up in the press conference. That's how well Jesse Kriel is playing. Who would have thought that kind of 12 months ago? Currently, Arendse and Cheslin Kolbe are on the wings. They are your top guys for getting clean breaks in this Rugby World Cup for the South Africans. 6 for Kolbe, 5 for Arendse, so pretty deadly. And then Willemse there at 15 is absolutely important because of his ability to cover as many positions in the back line. He can cover 10, he can cover 12, and then Kriel as well, very versatile. So with all these guys able to cover those positions, they can opt for that split. And then the bench, I mentioned the likes of Avisa to come on. He's one of the top carriers in the Springbok squad, and he hasn't played the last couple of weeks, so he is going to absolutely get through some work. And Willemse, I just mentioned him. He's the top carrier of all the Springboks guys. So you're going to get a guy with that footwork running at the All Blacks if they're not kicking the ball. That's going to be his thing to do. Bench-wise, Fourie, Oxenche, and Trevor Nyakane. Trevor comes into the side for Vincent Koch, who they said was not fit to train on Monday. And their rule in the Springbok squad is if you're not fit on Monday, you're not eligible for selection. So Trevor comes in having not played for a wee while. Ox, though, was absolutely the star of the show off the bench against England. Not quite single-handedly, but a big part of the reason the Springboks are in this final. Jean Klein gets a game. He hasn't played for a few weeks as well, but that means you've got 2 locks with him and Snyman. Snyman absolutely probably second only to Ox in terms of his impact from the bench in the wet. Handled the ball very comfortably, offloaded, scored a try. Quokka Smith has just quietly been probably the most impactful bench player. Generally, he's been the kind of epitome of the super sub, getting turnovers and big carries. Wies, like I mentioned, with his carries, and then Leroux covers 10, covers 15 there as well. So a bit of experience to bring on from the bench. Yeah, that is your Springbok side. Interestingly, I mean, tactically, we'll get to the stats at the end, but it's probably going to be a fair bit of kicking from the Springbok squad, maybe a bit more than normal. Jacques Nina kind of hinted at the fact that often a World Cup final is not the greatest spectacle, even though the last 2, like Springboks England and then All Blacks Australia, have both been pretty kind of easy on the eye games. This one may be edging towards more of a match for the purists. For the All Blacks, they have resisted the urge to kind of alter their bench strategy. They have kept things with a 5-3 split. So there was a little bit of talk with their team being named second that the All Blacks may opt for an extra forward to kind of match what the Springboks are bringing. But nope, the All Blacks are going to do what they're going to do. You would think with the 3 backs on the bench, they will try to keep the tempo of the game higher, while the Springboks may be looking to keep things a little lower. De Groot, Taylor, and Lomax, as I mentioned with the Springboks, scrum is going to be vitally important. Lomax and De Groot, as much as we can look at the Will Jordans and the Artie Saviers and whatnot, the All Blacks platform to whether they can win this 4th World Cup is going to depend largely on these 2 guys at scrum time. The weather forecast is not great. There is going to be drop ball. There are going to be a few scrums. These guys are going to have to front up, and the line-out is going to have to be good. Retallick is up from the bench to start ahead of Whitelock, who drops back down, and then Scotty Barrett continues on in the second row. We New Zealand fans can only hope he does not have any kind of brain explosion moments like he had in the Argentina semi-final. Tripping a guy when you're fiddling with the ball, when you're on the deck. Just leave well enough alone, Scotty Barrett. Great player, prone to the odd brain fart. So we hope that he can keep his composure. As I said, he got a red card in the last game against the Boks. Frizzell, Kane, and Savia, that's an important back row. I mean, Frizzell was missing from that game where we got well beaten by the Boks. He's going to need to add that bit of physical presence up against the big Boks back row. Sam Cane has been in phenomenal form. He, alongside Azi Savia, these are your top tacklers in this All Black squad. Both of them have made 47 in this World Cup, so they're going to have to show that same kind of commitment. And both of them have been bloody good at the breakdown. That's probably the area they got on top against Ireland, and that's the area Ireland got on top against South Africa. So for the All Blacks, that's certainly going to be an area of focus. Aaron Smith and Richie Mo'unga continue on at 9-10. There was a little bit of rumour going around that maybe Mo'unga was injured and not fit for the final, but Fozzie dismissed that in the press conference. The goal kicking is obviously going to be important for Richie after last week was a little bit wayward, but there's no doubt in that guy's ability with his running game. Jordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane in the midfield, so pretty same. All Blacks fans will be hoping that Jordie's big boot will be providing big exits, which is another area which was a little bit lacking in that big win over Argentina. Tele'a and Will Jordan, certainly two attacking wings. I mentioned that Kolbe and Arendse have had 6 and 5 clean breaks respectively. Well, Will Jordan's had 12. So he's already on 8 tries at this World Cup. So he's 1 try away from becoming the all-time kind of single World Cup try scoring record holder. But you get the feeling this is going to be a low try scoring game. But certainly he has been dangerous. And then Bodie Barrett continues on at 15. Not much talk about him, not doing the business at 15 because he's been in pretty bloody good form, I think, for the most part, pulling the strings with the kicking game and coming up into the line when needs be. Backs-wise, Taukei'aho, Tamaiti Williams, and Nipo Laulala. So Laulala comes in for Fletcher Newell. They mentioned that in the press conference as well. Basically, is it a bit of bigger bulk? Is it a bit of size? Fozzie says his technique at scrum time is going to be important, that he is a strong scrummager. Fingers crossed he shows a bit of that when he comes off the bench, old Nepo. Whitelock, as I mentioned, drops to the bench, and he is another one of the All Blacks' top tacklers, so he proved kind of vitally important in that quarterfinal against Ireland as well. Papali'i's got a lot of tackles in him. You can expect him to come on, I would imagine, with at least 20 minutes to go. Finlay Christie, D-Mac, and ALB are the 3 back replacements. So, there's certainly a bit of attacking in that All Blacks backline when they bring these guys on. Be interesting to see how many minutes Aaron Smith plays, because in that tight game against Ireland, they just played him for the entire thing. In terms of the attacking weapons, man, clean breaks, which is the one we mentioned. I already mentioned Will Jordan's got 12. Tele'a's got 7. And remember, he missed a game when he was omitted from that Ireland game as well. So, top carriers, Modi and Adi. It's an interesting one that it's a mix of the backs and the forwards, but that is your All Black squad for the Rugby World Cup final. Stats-wise for both of these teams, the South Africans against their kind of big opponents, and remember they've had to play, they've had to play France, they've had to play Ireland, they've had to play Scotland, they've had to play, basically going into the tournament, like of the top 5 teams, they've pretty much had to play all of them. They've only conceded 1 try against Ireland. They didn't concede any against England. They didn't concede any against Scotland. And when they played us last at Twickenham, only conceded that 1 late Cam Roigard consolation. So in the big games, South Africa, for the most part, haven't conceded many, but they did concede 3 against France, which will give the All Blacks a little bit of optimism. And also Tonga also managed 3 tries against the Boks, which was kind of uncharacteristic. And a lot has been made of the fact that the Springboks are going to kick the leather off the ball. They haven't really been doing that thus far. They haven't kicked it 30 times in any one game this World Cup. They're only averaging 22 kicks a game. The All Blacks kick it significantly more than the Springboks do. The All Blacks are averaging 27. They kicked it 39 times against France in the opener. They kicked it 33 times against Ireland. They kicked it 36 times against Argentina. So the All Blacks have been putting a fair bit of boot to ball. So remember, the weather forecast for this one is 90% chance of rain. Both sides are quite able to kick the ball. South Africa's kicking game against France caused all kinds of problems, but that England's kicking game against South Africa also caused all kinds of problems. So, we'll kind of have to see which side is able to be secure under high balls. And scrum time, I feel like, is going to be important. South Africa's been mauling it 6 times a game. All Blacks 4.5, so not a heck of a lot of difference, but South Africa do like a fair bit of a maul. All Blacks like a clean break. They've been getting 10 a game this year. The South Africans at 6.5, so that is one area where you look at the All Blacks and no, they do have game breakers who can cut teams to bits at a moment's notice. So does South Africa with their 2 wee, pace and footwork wingers. But both sides have got those game breakers. New Zealand lineout at the World Cup has been better, 97%. I think they've only lost 2 lineouts this entire World Cup, whereas South Africa lost 4 just in the game against England. Their lineouts at 88%. But remembering, the conditions in that England game were horrendous. So certainly affected everybody's line-out numbers. The goal kicking has been a lot talked about for South Africa, but in the last few weeks, man, it's been pretty good. It's come right at the right time. I think it was 100% last week, was it 80% the week before, 100% the week before that. Like when they've needed the goal kicks to go over, they've been getting them. Whereas the All Blacks last week, they didn't really need the goal kicks and they didn't get them. The All Blacks are only at 67% for this World Cup. You feel like in a World Cup final where the forecast is what it is, goal kicking is going to be, it's going to need to be better than 67%. Scoring-wise, the All Blacks' final 20 minutes is where they score most of their points. They're averaging 12 in 2023. It's 10 for all of the other 20-minute periods, so first 20, second 20. So the All Blacks finish games well. However, that's also the time when they concede the most points. So the final 20 minutes in this game could be the decisive 20. For the Boks, they also score most of their points in the final 20. But their most kind of notable period is the start of the second half. And I've mentioned it in the last 2 weeks. I will mention it again. In 2023, they're only averaging 1.5 points conceded. So South Africa are a very, very hard team to score points against at the start of the second half. At the World Cup, they've only been averaging 2 points conceded. So teams barely get a penalty in that whole 20-minute period against the Springbok side, potentially as all those big guns come off the bench. It is on at the Stade de France. I mentioned 90% chance of rain. Kicking, scrummaging, goal kicking. You feel like these are going to be very important things to break down. Yeah, it's going to be a proper rugby match. I hope no cards, no big injuries. Let's just have a titanic clash between these two sides who've barely met at this stage. It's only the once they've met in a Rugby World Cup final, which is strange seeing as they've won so many World Cups between them. That was South Africa in 1995. Nobody's managed to score a try against South Africa in Rugby World Cup finals. Is this All Black side the first to do that? It's going to be a fascinating one, folks. Wish both sides the best. I say that. I mean, it'll be bloody special if Kolisi lifts the trophy, but geez, I want Fozzie to have that mic drop moment. I hope it's a cracking game, man. Wayne Barnes is the ref. He's joined by Matt Carley, Carl Dixon on the sidelines, and Tom Foley's the TMO. Fingers crossed we're not hearing too much from them throughout the game. It is a 9 o'clock kickoff, which is 8 o'clock in the morning for those of us here in NZ. Predictions-wise, the All Blacks are slight favourites. 2 points with the bookies, 3 points with the Rugby Forecast algorithm, which is predicting 21-18. Fingers crossed it's a good game, folks. Thank you guys for coming along for the last 47 match previews. This is match preview number 48. You guys coming along and subscribing and liking and commenting has been absolutely a treasure. If you want to support the channel, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link down in the description. There's Patreon. You can check out my other channel, which is called 2 Cents on Tour, which is totally unrelated to rugby, but every now and again does feature me wearing a rugby jersey over in China. You can check out the podcast, 2 Cents Gets Distracted, which I do with Tony from Distracted Sports. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, folks. World Cup final, not too far away. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.